This meeting is being recorded.
I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here. I want to thank all of the neighbors and the people who decided to attend today to learn more about opportunity housing, for taking some time out of your evening. I want to thank the planning division staff for coming to present for us, as well as the people from Neighborhoods for All and David Eisbach for coming to present their positions on the issue and help inform the community. My name is Alex Stursch, and I'm presenting today with Liz Gallegos. She can say hello too. Oh, you're muted, Liz. No worries.
After a full day of Zoom, I would think I'd do this, but thank you, everybody. Good evening. My name is Liz Gallegos Flynn, and I'm a resident of District 1. And thank you for your time tonight, and Alex for being our lead host this evening. We do want to let you know that we're planning to go till 8 p.m. And so we've got a good amount of time to cover this wonderful agenda.
Thanks, Liz. Absolutely. And I live in District 6 in Willow Glen. And before we start, I just want to share that we're neighbors who are interested in helping inform the community because we care about community engagement and community involvement. We're not affiliated with any particular group on either side of the issue. We're just looking to get the correct and accurate information out there and facilitate discussion among San Joseans so we can learn more about this and make an informed decision. So with that, I think we can get started. First, me and Liz are going to present a bit of background information about opportunity housing. So I'm going to share my screen and show everybody what we got. So assuming everybody can see that, here are the slides that we have. So opportunity housing in San Jose. First, we want to go over what will the city council be deciding. So when this goes in front of the city council, they're going to be deciding whether to explore opportunity housing, exploring it citywide, and exploring it according to a 5-step process that the General Plan Review Task Force recommended specifically. So there's 5 specific steps that they're going to go over. And if approved, that 5-step process of exploration begins. If rejected, it doesn't. So what is opportunity housing? Opportunity housing is, depending on the lot size, allowing up to 4 housing units on one property or parcel that is currently on parcels regardless of the general plan designation. So that would mean that on properties, you could include a single family unit, or you could have duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. And the way that the recommendation is worded, they want it to be compatible with existing neighborhoods and aiming for keeping that in order in line. So what has already been decided, the details of those 5 steps recommended by the task force, a cost effectiveness analysis, and 2 environmental analyses, as well as laws that permit the construction of ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units. So into the recommendation, the specific 5 steps that the General Plan Review Task Force recommended. The first 2 steps are outreach, so a community engagement effort citywide to make sure everybody's voices are heard in the process and consider all perspectives on what type of opportunity housing people would like if we decide to do that, as well as making sure that in a hypothetical opportunity housing proposal that there be enough affordable housing for the community as well. So incorporating not just market rate housing. Step 3 that they recommended would be a displacement risk analysis. So considering what are the current protections for renters in San Jose and how opportunity housing would affect people who are renting currently and whether we need more protections in order to minimize displacement, as well as how opportunity housing would interact with current laws on the books regarding evictions and rents, such as the Alice Act ordinance. Step 4 would be to seek to preserve historic areas and properties within the scope of opportunity housing. So making sure that we're not violating the historic areas that we decided already exist. And then step 5 would be to update the policies and ordinances regarding the design guidelines and standards for housing. So opportunity housing is compatible with existing neighborhoods in their design, and also that revise the code to allow it to maintain allow it to blend in with the existing neighborhood. So what will not yet be decided? What will not yet be decided is the details of a specific opportunity housing proposal, because this vote is simply to begin that 5-step exploration. And at the end of the exploration is when questions come up considering what a final proposal would look like if we want one at all. And implementation of actual opportunity housing, hypothetically, won't begin not only until after that exploration is completed, but after any code or plan changes are enacted, and that would take at least the end of 2022 to finally get to that point. So why is this being considered now? Opportunity housing is being considered now because one, and primarily because it's part of a broader 4-year general plan review that happens. So in this context, there's other housing related items that is being considered. And then additionally, 3 issues that opportunity housing is meant to address would be concerns around affordability, the availability of homes and housing, and inequality and displacement. And so that is our little background presentation. And I will now throw it to the planning division to give their presentation.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Sithiawan, and I am a planner with the City of San Jose's Department of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. And tonight we have Jared Hart, Division Manager, as well as Michael Brio, Deputy Director of the Citywide Planning Team in the Planning Division. And they're going to help us, answer any questions that you may have tonight. So we have a brief overview presentation of the Opportunity Housing Proposal, and we're going to start with some of the background on zoning in San Jose and the housing crisis. So currently, of all the residential land in San Jose, 94%, so almost all of it is designated for single family homes. And that's a lot higher than the national average of 75% of residential land for big cities that are zoned for single family homes. And you can see it on the map that's shown on the screen with the light yellow showing all of the land that's designated for single family neighborhoods. So the shortage of land to build homes is one of the contributors of the housing shortage and affordability crisis. And we see that all over the Bay Area and San Jose, especially with median home sale prices reaching $1.225 million in the fourth quarter of 2020 and continuing to rise through 2021. So with these issues, we're asking ourselves, where do workers, teachers, young families, and others go who can afford a single family home in San Jose? A lot of these families, they don't qualify for affordable housing, but they also can't quite afford a typical single family home in San Jose. And additionally, a lot of families, they may not want to live in these higher density developments and prefer single family neighborhoods. So what is opportunity housing? Alex kind of went over that a little earlier. Opportunity housing is one way to deliver more housing choices by allowing additional housing types in existing single family neighborhoods while keeping the general form and the scale of a typical residential neighborhood. We've had people ask if we're considering this to meet our housing production goals, and yes, it will help some, but this is just one strategy in our toolbox to help with those goals. So what this will do is to provide additional housing choices rather than just single family homes or multifamily homes. It would allow multi-unit housing such as duplex, triplexes, and fourplexes, in addition to single-family homes on properties that are designated residential neighborhood, which is typically applied to the single-family neighborhoods. They're affordable by design because they're smaller in size, so they are not, deed restricted affordable, but they are smaller in size, so they would naturally be affordable. And it can also be referred to as missing middle housing, which refers to the scale of buildings, but it's also occasionally used to reference the missing housing type for the middle or working class. In between 1990 and 2013, less than 10% of housing was built at this missing middle scale, and that's why a lot of people refer to it as missing. So post-World War II, the city built primarily single-family housing, and it's only been since 2013 that the 4 to 6 story, multifamily buildings that you see in San Jose was built. And some cities have already allowed opportunity housing type development in cities like Minneapolis, Seattle, and Portland. In fact, the state of Oregon passed legislation to allow more housing types in their exclusively single-family housing zone statewide. And in the past couple months, cities in Northern California are also following suit to allow additional housing choices in these exclusively single-family neighborhoods. Sacramento voted to include this effort as part of their general plan update, as did South San Francisco. And the city of Berkeley, their city council also joined them, citing racist ties to the zoning of exclusively single-family neighborhoods. So it's a movement that's gaining steam across the nation and across California. So why are we talking about opportunity housing? I'm sure some of you are wondering how we got this idea. So this was part of the general plan 4-year review, as Alex mentioned earlier, and that's a periodic check-in, so to speak, of our general plan document and policies. So City Council directed staff to explore opportunity housing as part of the scope of work. So staff was to explore allowing single-family parcels currently designated with the residential neighborhood land use designation to allow 2 to 4 units under the following parameters. So limiting it to parcels near transit-oriented urban villages or immediately adjacent to residential parcels with existing medium density building types, developing some design guidelines to maintain the current allowed heights and keep setbacks comparable to existing single family homes to ensure that it's integrated with these neighborhoods, allowing flexibility on the number of units allowed per parcel depending on where it is and the lot size, clarify that any redevelopment is within the discretion of the property owner. So should they want to build it, they can, but we're not going to force you. So specify this would be sensitive to historic neighborhoods and also to validate that opportunity housing projects are cost effective. So in response to that direction, staff and the General Plan Task Force discussed the topic of opportunity housing at 4 different meetings. And we looked at allowing up to 4 units per parcel and analyzed where it would make the most sense. We also looked at allowing a mix of single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes, noting that there's existing state legislation that allows ADUs. So per state law, opportunity housing developments would be allowed to build ADUs if they comply to the city's zoning code. As part of this process, we also looked at considerations and next steps that would be needed to further explore opportunity housing. So staff presented recommendations at 3 different General Plan Task Force meetings, and there are actually 2 different recommendations. So there's a staff recommendation to allow opportunity housing generally within about a half-mile walkshed around transit-oriented urban villages, and or on parcels that share a property line with properties that allow for multifamily residential. However, the task force, they voted that the city council should, or they recommended that the city council should explore opportunity housing for properties citywide that have a residential neighborhood land use designation. And with the addition that staff should proceed with the opportunity housing work plan while they also prioritize urban village planning. Whoops. All right, so we've received a lot of questions about protections for historic resources. And under our recommendation, staff would explore different strategies to preserve the historic areas and properties while still allowing opportunity housing. Staff would consider allowing the adaptive reuse of structures of historic properties, but would also consider an age-based rule for older homes if the historic resources inventory update is not yet complete by the time of implementation. So for example, we would consider requiring any homes built before the 1950s to go through the single family house permit for redevelopment to ensure that the historic characteristics are maintained. All single family home projects at this time, if it's not on a property that's on the historic resource inventory, it would be by right. But if it was on the historic resources inventory, it would not be by right. Staff would typically require, this single family home to submit a single family house permit, which requires approval from the planning director and may require public notification depending on the size of the project. And we're thinking of a similar process for opportunity housing to make sure that properties on this inventory are adaptively reused. So we may require the same for properties that meet that age-based rule, but that's still to be determined. We also have received a lot of questions on the design standards and, whether we're changing setbacks or height or parking floor area ratio, et cetera. But we don't know the answer, the exact answers to that yet. It's a little too early in the process to make those determinations. And we also want to engage the community when we draft and revise those standards. So those changes would only be explored should council provide direction to staff to explore the opportunity housing policy in the summer, well, late summer. But as you heard earlier from the scope of work from City Council, the intent is to stay to the form and scale of a typical single family neighborhood while also allowing additional units at the same time. We also received a lot of questions in terms of who would be responsible for public utility and infrastructure needs. The developer would be, so we would charge the developer for fees like parkland impact fees and school fees and others to ensure that they pay into and they support the added demand on services. We've also received questions about potential displacement and what protections there will be for long-term renters in existing homes. As part of our recommendation, staff would conduct a displacement risk analysis to identify these communities at risk, and if the existing city protections like the ELS Act ordinance, which protects renters in buildings constructed before 1979, and the apartment rent ordinance and others if they're sufficient, or if we need to introduce additional protections for renters. So here we show the staff recommended half-mile area in the blue shade. Note that the dark gray symbolizes the urban villages that are near or existing planned transit stations like BART, light rail, or bus rapid transit. And note that under staff recommendation, it would also allow properties that share the property line with others that allow multifamily residential, but those are kind of scattered throughout the city, so it's not depicted here and it's a pretty small amount. So here we have a map of the District 1 boundary. And the areas that would allow opportunity housing would be the area between the Stevens Creek urban villages up here so south of the urban villages and north of the Highway 280. Right here is the city limit. And so north of that is Santa Clara. And so opportunity housing will not apply to the north of that. And here we have the District 3 boundary. Opportunity housing would be concentrated around the North 1st Street urban village, the East Santa Clara urban village, Roosevelt Park, and the Five Winds BART urban village. And in District 4, it would be the half-mile area for opportunity housing would be around the Berryessa BART, as well as the urban villages along the North Capitol Avenue corridor over here. And last but not least, here's a map of District 6. And so opportunity housing would be allowed to the north and south of the West San Carlos urban villages, Alameda urban villages, the Race Street light rail urban villages, as well as the Southwest Expressway urban village, as well as Kirtner light rail down here. So here are some examples of opportunity housing. This one right here is an example. These two are from Oakland, and this one right here is an example in San Jose, actually, and newly built. And these two up here are renderings of a duplex. It looks like a single family home, but there's an entrance in the front here, and then another entrance to the side. So at this time, staff is working to complete the cost effectiveness study that was requested in the City Council's scope of work. And we're studying that cost effectiveness for both the staff and task force recommendations by looking at the different parts of the city and where it may or may not be cost effective and whether, distance and location make an impact. So this effort's underway, but it's still pretty early in the stages of the study. And so it would be included as part of the opportunity housing staff report to City Council. So in our next steps for opportunity housing, staff is going to take the task force recommendations to City Council in the late summer. At that time, City Council will decide whether staff should pursue developing an opportunity housing policy. And if Council does direct staff to pursue it, staff would begin a series of action items, including conducting extensive community engagement, conducting a displacement risk analysis, preparing design standards, and then reviewing them for feedback through the community engagement process, and preparing an environmental analysis to identify the potential impacts of opportunity housing. And that concludes our presentation. If you're interested in learning more about opportunity housing, please visit the website on the screen. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at generalplanstaff@sanjoseca.gov for additional questions. Thank you.
We have Neighborhoods for All.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having us. I'm Kiyomi, and I'm with the Law Foundation and a coalition member of San Jose Neighborhoods for All, and I'm also a fourth generation San Josean. And with me is Matthew. Do you want to say hi, Matthew?
Matthew Reed from Silicon Valley at Home, and also a member of San Jose Neighborhoods for All Coalition.
Great. Thanks. So we're gonna do our presentation together. So, but I thank you for having us. We're really glad that we're having this discussion, and I think it just really shows that we value our neighborhoods with a lot of passion. And I hope that today will add some reassurance that we're early in talking about opportunity housing, and there is no policy being implemented at this time. So the slide that you're looking at right now, this is our coalition and folks that are supporting a citywide opportunity housing study. And it's really great to see this because it shows just how diverse this group is, and that opportunity housing really has, citywide opportunity housing really can bring a variety of different benefits. Great. And so our host went over this already, but this is the task force recommendation, and it's to really explore allowing duplex, triplex, fourplex in the single family neighborhoods. We're doing the citywide community engagement right now. Obviously, the city staff is on with us today too, and really looking to the council's direction on whether or not to study something come late summer, early fall. And then if that does happen, it will take about 18 to 24 months to get that completed. So I wanted to just briefly go over San Jose's timeline just to see how much we've changed over the years. And as I'm sure many of you know, we are currently on land that was formerly occupied by the Muwekma Ohlone people. They were stewards of this land throughout the generations until colonization. And so the fact that I call this area my home came at great expense to them, and they're still an important force today. I'm going to jump ahead, thank you. Jump ahead to 1777 when we were first established the small community of 68. And then we fast forward up to the 1950s, right? And this is really kind of the end of the Valley of the Heart's Delight, the agricultural time, and before we head into the big tech interest. But that's actually my mom's family there on the left, and they were sharecroppers in Blossom Valley. And it was really because of the variety of housing choices that they were able to eventually get into a small single family home over the following decades. And then if we go to where are we now? We have we've increased our population quite a bit. We're over 1 million people. And so as you can see, just from looking back, as San Jose's changed its direction, evolved its identity, we've welcomed new folks to be San Joseans and really have to think about how we're planning for the future. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matthew.
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you so much to our hosts for inviting us to present. Staff went over this briefly, but I think it's important to visualize that currently 94% of San Jose's land is zoned for single family homes. That's the pink area. The blue areas are the remaining 6%, and that's where we can have more than one home built on a unit. The challenge right now is that 50% of the residents live in the little the little blue areas, and 50% live in the pink areas, and it's posing a real challenge. My day job is to figure out how to build as high density housing as possible along transit routes and as much affordable housing as possible in as many places as we can in the city at high density, because we need that housing. Opportunity housing is a different piece of the puzzle. And San Jose really stands out nationally as being one of the cities that has the most restrictive zoning for the most areas. So our neighbor, Mountain View, only half of the areas that are zoned for housing are zoned for exclusively for single family homes. Coming back to this map, we're in the process of entering a new planning period, a state mandated planning period, and we will be over the next year and a half. Our staff, many of whom are here and will be answering questions, are going to be planning for how to fit an additional roughly 68,000 new homes as per state mandate into mostly these blue areas on the map. Opportunity housing is not an affordable housing program on its own, but it responds to a real challenge that we have in San Jose and in the Bay Area in particular. In the last decade, the average single family home price has gone up 200%. And what we have now is a tremendous gap between the wages that people are making and the price of entry into the single family home market. And there's a huge difference between the average rents, which we know are already very, very high, and the roughly $212,000 income that you need to get into the housing market at the median home price today. This prices out even dual income, many dual income professional households in the city. And what we're seeing is that people are being pushed out of the city because they don't have access to the options that they would like to have. And so we're losing lots of different people. We're losing people who are working people at the lower end of the income spectrum, but we're also losing really middle income people who don't feel like there are options for them in the city. And we're seeing this, you know, in one place, young families leave and the school enrollments go down. And we've had a dramatic decrease in elementary school enrollments throughout the city. Concentrated on the east side, but San Jose Unified is down significantly. I've added Moreland Elementary, which borders Campbell, I believe, to also show that we're down 7%. This is just over the last 5 years. I'm going to turn it back to Kiyomi because this is her in the picture.
Yeah, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time on you know, who this is really looking to serve, and that is the missing middle. And I say that with a caveat with, you know, of course, we'd be very interested in seeing what incentives could be provided for even lower income people, but really what we're looking at is the missing middle. So who's the missing middle? So that's my friends and I, right when we were about to embark on our big college journeys. And out of the four of us, I am the only one that is a single family homeowner in San Jose, but I want to just tell you quickly how that happened. And so just to back up quickly, the missing middle is those of us who don't qualify for government subsidies, but homes are still out of reach either due to price or availability. So the reason that I got to be a single family homeowner in San Jose is because I married someone who, with the help of his parents, was able to purchase a condo almost 20 years ago. And we were able to leverage that condo to get into the home we have now. Now, especially as a mother of a daughter, getting married is not a financial plan, and is not, and on my own would not have been able to have afforded this home. My other three friends in there on the left, they're all much smarter than I am. She has a degree from Stanford and USC Law. The woman in the middle has a degree from Berkeley, a PhD from UCI, and the woman to my far right is one of the few female commercial pilots. and they are all well educated, they're all employed, they're all making six figures, but they cannot come home. And so this is what we're hoping that opportunity housing will be able to do, because we agree that when you save and you work hard, you should be able to purchase a home, and opportunity housing may be a way to increase the availability of homes for this missing middle. So if we can, yes, great. So again, we just want to remind folks that, this is not a new type of housing. This is actually a really, it's an older idea. And if you, if we look to the following slide, great, you can see that it's already here in San Jose. This was like a very popular way of bringing homes to people in the mid-century, last century, which isn't so long ago. And it was seen as you can see in this graph, you can look at your own districts. They were specifically talking to 1, 3, 4, and 6, that there's actually quite a lot. I did not realize that there was this number here until I really got into this opportunity housing. So you can see that it blends extremely well, and it's already a part of the character of our existing neighborhood. I think I'll hand it off to Matthew to walk us through the next one.
So we like to talk about pictures, so you'll just bear with me. These are existing opportunity housing type homes that exist already in many of our communities. This one is in District 1 in Westgate. This is a fourplex in Japantown in District 3. This is a fourplex in the Victor neighborhood in District 4. I just want to point out, if you look at the bottom picture, this is a panoramic picture of the street. These homes look pretty much like single family homes, and it's only when you sort of scroll around to the side that you see that actually in the rear of the sort of low impact frontage, there's space for multiple units. And so it's essentially a single family home lot that it includes homes for 4 different families. This is a duplex in Willow Glen. It's a much older property. You can see it was integrated into a single family neighborhood when it was built. And some of these buildings are stunning. This is my favorite picture. And so I always like to throw it in at the end. This is a duplex in Willow Glen. I would love to live there. It's clearly an asset to the neighborhood. And this is actually a fourplex that also is in downtown. Kiyomi?
Yep, great. So part of the reason that Law Foundation is very interested in opportunity housing is because of the Fair Housing Act, passed nearly 60 years ago with this as part of the Civil Rights Package. And the Supreme Court recognized the fair housing laws to eliminate historical patterns of segregation and to create integrated communities. If we go to the next slide, California has what they call the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Act, which means, like all cities, San Jose has an affirmative duty to promote fair housing. The Othering and Belonging Institute's research showed that there's 2 obvious ways to promote racial and residential integration, and that's preserve integration where it exists, and then give enhanced opportunities and incentives for at least some people to move out of segregated communities and into different race communities. So we see citywide opportunity housing as a way that San Jose can meet this obligation and desegregate or remove our exclusionary zoning by implementing opportunity housing citywide. And if you look at that, it's a conceptual map of the original council direction. It could potentially do what we call building new walls, right? So it's just another way of perhaps, by containing flex housing to certain areas, are we actually doing a different kind of exclusionary zoning? So something that we're very interested in. The next slide shows that this is this is a climate smart plan. I used to work for a Greenbelt Alliance, which focuses on a nonprofit focusing on preserving open space and smart growth. And because we are building infill dense housing, this removes the sprawl pressure off of our open space lands and also reduces our VMT emissions. If we go to the next slide, you can see that I love this pictograph where it shows, how many people are actually commuting in and out of our county versus other counties. And the idea is if we can allow more people to live near where they work, we help to reduce the commute and we help to reduce the vehicle miles traveled, the greenhouse gas emissions. And this is a statement from the VTA representative on the Green on the General Plan Task Force. And it really shows that the idea is when you can invest in housing, you can also attract transit, and the inverse too, right? When you have more housing, you can provide more riders. This is a really nice way for housing and transit to be in sync.
So I guess that's back to me. We're really excited to be having these open conversations. We know that there's a lot of concern. We clearly have strong opinions, but we feel like there's room for lots of different perspectives, and we really appreciate the city staff being willing to come and share and participate in these discussions. We are asking folks to get involved in our effort to advocate for this policy going forward. Our website is sjneighborhoodsforall.com. We'd ask you to come and read through and endorse our campaign. Think about ways that you can reach out to your neighbors to share information. We are super eager to participate in as many discussions as possible. And you can reach out to us there, and we'd be glad to come to talk to whatever group you have available. Again, this is the website. We have a Facebook page. We're 21st century. We have a Twitter and an Instagram feed as well. And again, we really appreciate being invited to present this evening. I think we went over by a couple minutes. We appreciate your patience.
Now, we're going to move on to David Eisbach's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Neighborhoods for All and the city for inviting me to present the opposition point of view. And I would begin simply by saying that everyone has accepted the 94% zoning single-family home as being absolute and true. Now, that statement is not the final proposal, but only the question. Now, the question is, should we authorize a lengthy study of its merits? This is nonsense. It should be stopped now. We don't need to eat an entire apple to know that it's rotten. Now, I question number one, planning's estimate that single-family zoning takes up 94% of San Jose's land. I don't know how that was figured, but the Manhattan Institute in 2018 made a survey called Silicon Valley. And in it, it took a look at San Jose. And this is what it said, that San Jose has 53.4% of detached single-family homes and 10.9% of attached homes. That's 64.3%. And to me, I don't think that that's the way to say that Mountain View has 50% and some other cities have the same or whatever. Anyway, that's 64%. Now, I would think that if single family zoning is targeted for being too broadly spread and compare that with other cities, it's kind of an apples and oranges thing. I don't know how the planning and the city figured that out, perhaps in general. You know, in those areas that are all yellow, there are parks, there are schools, and there are a number of things there. So when you're talking about specifics like that, I don't think that that's really honest, the way that is presented. Now, I question why the city selected expansion to 4 units. when the state accessory dwelling unit directive says that a triplex and a fourplex may add one attached ADU and two more attached ADUs, making up to 7 units possible. In 2015, San Jose did a study which stated that single-family homes, being of low density, tax the resources of the city. And that's true. And that is true. And with opportunity housing, density will rise. San Jose's housing obligation, that 68,000 that Michael had mentioned, that would be met. A rise in property revenue, and then passing off any infrastructure problems onto developers, and ultimately attach the whole units to ARO, TPO, and the Ellis Act. Now, I question housing's claim that placing multi-units on city single-family residential lots would bring rental prices down because of unit sizes. What would 7 units offer, constrained by, if you had the standard, which is 60 feet by 100 feet, a 6,000 square feet lot, and if you take away the sides, that is the setbacks, of 2,500 square feet, that leaves you a footprint of 3,500 square feet. Now, that's probably the best thing for an absolute fourplex. Now, you've shown some very fine houses and some very fine designs. What I'm fearful of is the designs and things that are not so, they're boxy and out of sync with the neighborhood. And it ignores, one of the problems with that is that most of our cover, that is canopy and tree covers, is eliminated by overdevelopment. They're all on, in other words, they're all on the streets and the parking strips of the houses. Now, what is not really, a couple of times, last time I think I had a little video about Seattle's Ballard neighborhood, and they said that their production, the way it went, destroyed from 40 to 60% of the coverage of trees in this building boom that they had. Now, last week, I mentioned land cost developing opportunity housing. We had 2 properties, and just for instance, I had looked at a recent finding, and properties are selling for $1.6 million in West End, and they could be selling. You know, the $1.2 million is fine as well. And I said that there are some properties in San Jose who would be selling for $800,000. If the most economical way to clear a lot, that is a lot if it's small, not the lot. If you got a 6,000 square foot lot and you have a little bungalow there that is, let's say 1,100 to 1,500 square feet, that's not dividable. And your best bet would be just to clear it and build a proper fourplex. So if you take that and you figure that the price of a fourplex would be in the neighborhood of $200 or $2 million, potentially the one that developed on the 800,000 property would be 8,000 better off in sales price than the other one that had to tear down a $1.6 million. So a new buyer, for example, who would buy one of these fourplexes and put, let's say he sold it, he bought it for $2 million, and he puts $400,000 down payment. That's 20%. His mortgage would be $1.6 million, with a monthly payment of $7,638 and a new property tax bill of $3,000 a month. With insurance, management, utilities, and maintenance, it's $12,000 per month. That's $3,000 per unit of the 4 units there. And in looking at the city's mention here, they mentioned that that $3,025 is the rate that has gone up within the city for a 2-bedroom bath. Excuse me, please. So that would simply, excuse me, that $3,000 rent or $12,000 a month would be just cash flow, zero cash flow. Absolutely. Somebody puts down $400,000 to buy a property and gets zero, just meets costs. It doesn't make any sense. So how is that supposed to bring costs down? I don't think it is possible. Now, there's a statement I read that haunts me, and it goes something like this. Tax benefits of charitable donations has become more important than the recipient's cause. Now, the quote that I had heard was much more elegant than that, but straightforward. It went on to say that the nonprofits who receive them recognize the possibilities for themselves over the cause that they're presenting. Now, I noticed that that neighborhoods, you had 19 individual nonprofits of varying descriptions who are supporting this move. And so it becomes clear to me, the city has responsibilities it can't possibly cover, so it relies on nonprofits. I think too much. A BBC ethics guide website covered what's wrong with charity. Professor Rob Reich has argued tax incentives for charitable giving can worsen social inequalities by reducing revenue that the state has available to them for such social projects. By granting tax-exempt status to charitable organizations, this too reduces the revenue available for state. So, most importantly, these aspects of tax regimens are regarded by some people as a transfer of monies from an area that is politically accountable for its spending to an area where accountability is more viable. Now, the group in favor last week had about, 19 of these nonprofits supporting this. Why? Because their role isn't only housing. Through private donations and city grants, they provide medical, job training, childcare, language, legal aid assistance, citizen training, homeless service, food, transportation, expanding economic opportunities, and the distribution of federal, state, and local funds. In Oakland's Moms for Housing successful squatting venture caused the Oakland City Council to order the owner of that property to negotiate with the tenants. Even one of their council members threatening eminent domain. The Oakland Community Land Trust paid the $587,500 in cash that and it will require some time to make repairs before transitional mothers can move in to use it. Now, it becomes very clear to me that a nonprofit could not purchase the property as the private owner did in my examples up above. They just can't do it. And So how are those rents going to be held to a minimum? Affordable? There is a bill right now, AB 1199 in Sacramento, that is calling for a 25% excise tax on the gross receipts of landowners who have rental properties if they have more than 10 properties. Now they're aiming at corporations here. But when you think about that, that's 25% of your annual income to be given and to be used then for housing, right? Or whatever they're going to use it for. Now, there's even another bill that lowers it and says if you own 4, you're going to be in trouble as well. These are aimed at corporations. Well, it is interesting to note that all nonprofits are excluded from this excise tax. Where does that come from? What does that mean? Now that tells me when San Jose passes the anti-displacement ordinance, which they will, requiring owners of income property for sale, having to give their tenants an option to buy the property if they have an agreed on price before, then they have to offer it, the offer of first refusal. So that will be an introduction to the land trust, the nonprofit land trust to come in. Now, who will pay the taxes? In order even for that land trust to keep an affordable thing there, they're going to have outside money and support. Where does a nonprofit get its money? A major part of that money comes from the federal government. There's $14,300,000 that just came from HUD. 48 million came last year for the pandemic, and there is 4,300,000 set aside for housing to do as they wish with. Now, what's happened here is private ownership that maintains, pays taxes, fees, and are going to be replaced by nonprofit entity, which not only which brings in host services at great cost, and that doesn't support the government, and even with their present of non-paying taxes, will make an even more strain. So where is that 14,300,000 going to go? How far will it go once this thing gets hold? Now, there are 6 out of 11 city council members who are wedded to every prospect of the interest of the low income in their district. They order studies like this opportunity and the anti-displacement. The housing director, Jackie Morales-Ferran, has since 2015 expanded city apartment rental ordinance, created the tenant protection ordinance, the Ellis Act, and is preparing anti-displacement policy and is pushing this opportunity housing. The Housing and Community Development Commission has 13 seats. It's an advisory commission that has great influence with the council. Its bylaws require 5 seats to be filled by persons or organizations who in some way actively support the interests of low income, plus a renter. Now, and 1 person who rents a space in a mobile home park. Now that's 7 people out of 13 seats dedicated to low cost. Now, if you can tell me that someone sitting representing low cost rents and low income people will not support things like opportunity, things like rent control, and all of that, then I'm in the wrong seat. So at any rate, so the HCDC is an arm of housing. And I can tell you they're meeting tonight, and whatever they decide, you can bet it's going to be not unanimous, but it's going to be overwhelmingly in support of anything that housing tells them. And housing is in support and expanding anything that the council tells them. And the council has a majority of 6-5. So what you're hearing tonight is an example of outreach. I have no idea how many of you are in favor of opportunity housing. And the thing is, there doesn't appear, I'm sorry, my time, am I still okay on the 15 minutes? I'm almost through. The thing is, I think that what ought to happen before we spend some more money on another long process, expensive process, I think we really ought to think about having our thoughts of the community right now. In a survey in February, District 5, that's Juan's district, voted over 500 to 300 against this proposal, period. Now, finally, I would think that if you want to study something, I think that a continuing study of opportunity should be dropped. It's time to study paying low-income citizens a stipend of $1,000 a month, housing allowance, and stop this constant exacerbation and pressure and actual push against property rights. Now, if that doesn't go, and I'm sure that it won't, then at least I think that nonprofits should be audited for payroll, and they should be duty bound to absolutely report what they're doing and what successes they've had. I rest my case. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, David, for your excellent presentation. And we're now going to go to Q&A. So we're going to get some questions answered. And Liz and I are going to be handling this. And so we're first going to read off the first questions in chronological order. And Liz and I are supposed
Doris,
to.
yes, Doris, did you want to post, you have the first question. Did you want to ask it live, or would you like us to read it? Doris? Well, I'll go ahead and read it for you. Question is, why don't you support the elimination of single-family zoning next to transportation corridors and leave intact family neighborhoods alone?
And whomever would like to answer that question.
Sure, I can take that. So, yeah, just to clarify, so the proposal doesn't eliminate single family zoning. The proposal is to basically allow up to fourplexes in areas that are currently designated for single family homes. In terms of the location, staff, as Jessica described in our presentation, staff's recommendations is a half-mile walk shed from our transit urban villages. And then the general plan task force is recommending a citywide approach. And I think that might get at the next question as well, in terms of, the locational aspects of the proposed policy. Again, that, staff's recommending half-mile walk shed from transit villages. The general plan task force recommended taking this concept citywide. The city council will consider both staff's recommendation and the task force's recommendation when this item is brought to council.
Right. And hopefully you got your question. And so the next question could be from that kind of, I think, answered Douglas Andrews' question a bit. But Douglas, would you like to ask your question through audio or video, or would you like us to ask it for you?
Yeah, I certainly would. Thank you very much, Alex. My question is, generally, when you're, undertaking a major change, whether it be an industry or government, you generally do not do something of the order of magnitude because you don't know the unintended consequences. Doing this citywide, I think, would be an unnecessary risk. I do understand the concern about, I do understand the concern about limiting this to transit corridors. However, if we do just do the current staff recommendation, what % of the city would now be eligible for opportunity housing? And secondly, why not just recommend we do a pilot for 2 years as part of the recommendation to see how this all sorts out? Because we just really don't know the unintended consequences. I have been in parts of companies where some things have been done company-wide with unfortunate occurrences.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Douglas.
thanks for the comment, Douglas. Yeah, and then that'll be something the city council will need to consider in terms of the, whether do they want to continue moving forward with this concept, and if so, how broadly do they want to apply it in terms of the locational aspect of that. There are, we do have examples of other cities that have started to implement this at their, some citywide, some at more focused levels. Probably don't have, most of those cities that have just begun to implement it. So we don't have, a lot of examples yet coming back from those cities on how it's kind of rolling out. But again, yeah, that's something that the city council will consider when this comes to them.
Jared or Jessica, do you know, under staff proposal, roughly what percentage of the single family lands the opportunity housing would apply to? I know that we've mapped that. I just don't know if we've made a percentage out of it.
We have made a percentage. We've done that data. I just don't have it right now, so I'd have to get back to you on that.
Could I just jump in, Alex? I think we actually believe that this is not a radical step that is going to alter the fabric of the city. And the reason we don't believe so is because this is how we used to plan neighborhoods. There are standards in place that govern the design and lot coverage and height, and there are standards that limit the attachment of either detached or attached accessory dwelling units. This is not throwing the door open to the Wild West. This is a process of looking at ways of providing more different types of housing types in more different parts of the city for more different people. Every place that has done this incrementally by neighborhood has seen a very gradual process. The couple of cases have shown roughly 1% every 5 years, so that you can do the math. It takes an awful long time to change the fabric of the city. To put that in context, though, if we were seeing 1% of the single-family homes being redeveloped every 5 years, we would be essentially matching the current single-family home or townhome production, and depending on the year, it could be 2 or 3 times. So with a very subtle, gradual, sort of evenly distributed across the city approach, we actually would have a significant impact that we're not able to have right now in terms of providing housing choices to people in the city.
All right. Thank you, guys. And now, Mark, if you'd like to ask your question through audio visuals.
Yes, I'm Mark Ramoser here in District 6. Sebastian, I do not represent anybody. I'm just an interested citizen. And it seems to me there is a disinformation campaign about this issue based on fear. We just heard some disinformation from Mr. Eisbach. A former city council member here in District 6 has been going on social media spreading scare stories that opportunity housing means the single family home next door to yours will suddenly be replaced with a 10-unit building. How do we get past this kind of disinformation and make sure that those just over 1 million people know what this is and what it isn't?
Well, if perhaps whoever would like to answer that question, maybe talk about what the city's goals are for community engagement and trying to.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So, I mean, I think, so how do you combat or counter disinformation? Well, that's exactly like what we're doing tonight, right? So this is, we're going to probably one or probably about 2 meetings like this a week. And we haven't even started this work. We haven't even been given direction by the council to start it. So that's what we're doing, is we're going out to meetings like this and presenting sort of what is on the table so people understand it. They may have opinions about it one way or the other, but we just want them to understand what's actually being proposed. So I think that's really what we're doing here. And there's going to be even more efforts if the council directs us to go farther on this. This whole effort's going to ramp up. We'll likely have a staff person working full time on just the outreach part of this. We're also being interviewed by many reporters that are doing stories on this to get the information, the factually correct information out there. Yeah, it's really important that we have, if we're going to have a debate about this, we have a debate on the correct information. And, people have different perspectives on this. We understand that, but we just want to make sure that the discussion and the debate is occurring with what is actually factually going to be proposed if it moves forward.
Follow up, there are 86 people at this meeting. The next door post of which I spoke was likely viewed by hundreds. It just doesn't seem that just meetings like this aren't going to get it done.
Yeah, so again, I think right now we don't have the resources to sort of ramp up a major educational or outreach campaign. If council wants to move forward with this, we are going to have a lot more resources to throw at it. So, so I understand that, and we'll take that feedback back and see what else we can do between now and October, when we anticipate this will go to council for their direction.
Great, and feel free to also link, people to the City of San Jose Opportunity Housing website. That we have a FAQ there, so people can actually see what the facts are, and then if they have any questions, they can feel free to email us to get to know that. But yeah, currently we're not on Nextdoor and doing that kind of outreach. So if have the opportunity to link that website, that'd be great. But yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And now, Brad, if you'd like to ask your question, go ahead. And if you
thank you. And just for sake of full disclosure, I used to work in the planning department. I was a planning division analyst. So, but I'm talking here as a taxpayer. My concern is that in the past, or I think the planning department is still doing this. They plan communities out, taking into account many issues such as parking, for one thing. So now you're creating all these new living units, and where are people going to park their cars? And You know, I can't have my 80-year-old neighbor ride a bicycle, of course. You know, we're all being forced to ride our bikes. But anyway, I'm not trying to be facetious, but, you know, the other issue, it has to do with, prior to going to the city, I used to work for the assessor's office. I was an appraiser. So when I'm looking at these parcels and now I'm looking at highest and best use. And when these parcels sell and they say, well, you know, there's a potential that you can put 5 or 6 living units on this parcel. So how much is the parcel really worth now? And I can see the property tax, they're looking at property tax revenue. So we're looking at all these parcels being reassessed. And I can imagine now people screaming that their property taxes are going to be high. So what's my point? My point is there's so many issues involved that haven't even been touched upon. The other issue is, why doesn't the city just implement eminent domain, or the state, and say, you know, you're living on a parcel that's too big. You know, you don't need this much room. So we're going to take some of your parcel and divide it up so we can put some more living units on it. So anyway, I appreciate the time you gave me. Hopefully I've given some people some room for some thought. And again, thank you for this forum.
Alex, could I comment briefly? I think one thing that's very important about this is that this is a process that's driven by homeowners and the decisions they make about their property. This is a market-driven process. To the extent that there's an affordable component, that's going to be a whole separate discussion. And so in some ways, this is actually enabling and restoring control over people's land to them that was kind of taken away by the zoning restrictions. We've spent a lot of time looking at redevelopment of smaller single family homes into 3,500 square foot homes that cost $3.5 million. It's happening now. Our communities are changing. Some of those are beautiful homes. But the reason that that's happening is because there are no choices. And so it's creating opportunities for some people and it's restricting opportunities for others. But this is a market-driven process. This isn't a government intervention. This is just freeing up private choices.
And thanks for the comments, Brad. Yeah, parking is definitely a topic and concern we've heard a lot through the various community meetings and outreach events that we've attended. So yeah, that will be something that definitely will be analyzed as part of the next phase of this work. So if City Council directs staff to continue working on opportunity housing and this policy work, then we would, you know, we would be looking at parking, and definitely, again, that's definitely a concern we're commonly hearing about the proposal. I think there's you have one other. I mean, there's the proposal doesn't. We're not considering, you know, eminent domain as part of opportunity housing. So just wanted to clarify that. That may have been more of a comment than a question, but just as a clarification.
Thank you, neighbors and friends. We're having a very robust conversation and discussion. However, we do want to be mindful of time. We still have many, many questions to go through. So I will ask our those asking the question to please succinctly ask your question, as well as to get good answers as succinctly as possible. Cynthia, you're next up. Please ask your question.
Yeah, it was just a very simple question. So when you talk about single family homes, are you talking about R2 lots also?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Cynthia. We've gotten a lot of questions on this. So so the 94% is, you know, I think Jessica covered this in on her first slide. So basically, it's 94% of the land that's designated for residential uses in the city's general plan is designated for single family homes. So that's where the 94% figure is coming from. It's the general plan land use designations of that land that's designated for residential uses. 94% is for single family homes. It's not zoning, it's general plan land use designation. So properties that are zoned R2 they may fall into those areas designated for single family in our general plan, particularly in those areas where you already see a mix of opportunity housing types within our single family home neighborhoods. And I think we saw some good examples of those, particularly in Matthew and Kiyomi's presentation. Those types of neighborhoods often will be designated as what's called residential neighborhood for single family homes, but they may have R2 zoning within there.
Thank you for that. And Catherine, you'd like to ask your question?
Thank you. Yeah. It seems like a lot of the concerns people are having about the opportunity housing are talking about it bringing the wrong kind of people into neighborhoods and making up all these stories. I mean, number one is, I mean, it's just such disinformation because it seems like the people who are going to be living there will be like teachers and nurses and city staff. And I don't understand why people are so afraid of these people being in their neighborhood. And I grew up in a neighborhood that was mixed duplexes and single family homes down in Santa Ana. And it was a nice, peaceful neighborhood. It wasn't full of, you know, trouble or anything. And there's just so much disinformation. And I couldn't even follow one of the presentations because he kept talking all these numbers. We didn't have any slides. I can't keep track of that without slides. I didn't know or would have asked for disability accommodation that there be slides like the city and SV at Home had. And I just feel like they're just mountains of disinformation being just tumbling down on me. And like conspiracy theories about the charities in town and stuff.
Okay, if anybody would like to grab that question, I think.
I think it was more of a statement than a question.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think.
Except, yeah, Brad, I think you've had a chance to speak and ask your questions. We'll come back to you at the end and give everybody else a chance to get through as well. So thank you for agreeing to that decision I just made there. Next question is from James Marshall. James, please ask your question.
Just a quick one. I'm curious as to where I can go to get copies of the maps that showed the transit villages and the areas around them, so I could determine what streets, etc.
Right. Some maps are actually on the website, but I know that it's a little hard to see and to zoom in on some of these maps. And so, you know, we'll talk internally and figure out a way where, you know, people can see, you know, if they're in these opportunity housing areas. So yeah, we'll get back to you on that and then publish it on the website when that's complete.
Thank you, James. And for Alyssa's question, she requested she not go on audio or video. So she asked, the proposal is not to allow opportunity housing anywhere but in those expanded areas around transit only. So asking for clarification about whether the proposal is for opportunity housing only on transit areas or citywide. And as the planning department pointed out in their presentation, there's two recommendations that differ. So the planning division asked for focus on transit areas as a priority, and the task force said citywide would be the focus, and the city council is going to be considering the task force recommendation. So they're going to be considering opportunity housing citywide.
They're actually considering both. Yeah, we're presenting both, and then it's up to them to decide, you know, if they want to go with one or the other or some sort of hybrid or something else. It's really up to the city council on what to decide, but we will be presenting both options.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Next question is from Federico Morales. Federico, did you want to pose your question?
Oh, I don't believe he's available.
He's not available.
answer
Okay.
it, so.
So Federico says, for reference, I'm a San Jose native. I'm 35 years old and have 3 children under age 6. My wife is a stay-at-home mom right now, but has a master's in education. I work in tech and, sorry, I work in tech and make about $150,000 per year. I cannot afford housing for my young family in San Jose. We need to figure out a way to alleviate the housing crisis. This comment there. And Alex?
I think Flora's question would be next. So Flora, if you'd like to ask your question. You would rather us read it for you?
I just wanted to know where I can get the audio because I've had several neighbors ask me for the recording.
I think technical support.
Yeah, the recording will be available within the next few days. It takes a while to convert it and upload it, and we, the co-hosts, are volunteers, and so it will be done as time permits, but in the next few days.
Next question is from Maria Nashvan. Maria, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, I just, my question was actually answered already, that you're going to be publishing the various districts and what areas that opportunity housing will be considered. Jessica, I think, answered that question.
Yeah, there are some maps if you want to, look at the website right now, but it takes a while to load. And so if you want it now, you can go look at it now. But at the same time, we might come up with something where it's a little easier to read and zoom in.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. And next, we're going to David, if you'd like to ask his question through audio or video. And if not, we can ask it for him. So David's question is it true that with opportunity housing, it's possible that any given home could have a 4-unit multiplex on each side and in the back and across the street, with each unit being able to have 2 cars? And planning division, I suppose you could answer that question.
Sure. Yeah, so again, I think it gets back to kind of the locational aspects of the proposal, and kind of the council will be considering this policy concept on whether to continue to move it forward, and then if so, is it how broadly? Again, staff is proposing this looking at opportunity housing within half mile of transit urban villages, and the general plan task force has recommended that it be applied citywide. I'd also mention that and I think Matthew spoke to this, is we wouldn't anticipate big changes to neighborhoods. I think the amount of development that would, or redevelopment of properties that would move forward would be limited, and would be relatively limited, and we would not anticipate big transformative changes to existing neighborhoods. It would be very incremental, and so I just would mention that as well.
I add to that, though, that under staff's recommendation and the task force recommendation, where opportunity housing would apply in those areas, be it wherever that the council decides and the staff and task force recommendation, all single family properties would have an opportunity to build fourplexes in those areas. So, I mean, theoretically, it could be all the properties around you if you happen to be an area where opportunity housing is allowed. But as Jared just said, we don't anticipate that would happen, but theoretically it could. We should highlight that a part of our work program between now and when we go to council in October to get their direction is we're doing a cost feasibility analysis to understand, given the cost of construction, given the cost of land, where would we expect opportunity housing to be built in the city, under what conditions, what type of housing might be built. Would it be new construction or conversion of existing housing units? And then would it be built for rental or for sale or both? And what would the rents likely be? Would they be, we're not seeing this as affordable housing as in, housing affordable to lower income families. It's really meant to be that missing middle housing for people in the middle. For example, that gentleman, I think his name was, I forget his name, Jose, who has 3 kids and his wife stays at home and takes care of them. He works in tech. The missing middle, like people in that sort of middle income category. But I think that body of work is going to be really important to have an understanding of, for the council of, what could we expect if we move forward, and it very well may shape their direction of staff and how we proceed.
Neighbors, we are at the time that's allotted. However, I wanted to ask if permission, if our panelists and certainly our participants would be willing to stay on. Is that okay? Okay, we'll go for the next 15 minutes and see how well we proceed, and we'll do a time check as well. So our next question comes from Bill Rankin.
Hi, I put in 4 questions. Can I ask all those, or would you prefer fewer for now?
I think we're trying to give everybody an opportunity to at least ask one of their questions first.
Okay. So one question is, will opportunity housing lead to people being able to afford to buy, or will it be for cheap rent? I guarantee you that a property with 7 rentable units will be unaffordable to most. And so my question is the whole design for opportunity housing to allow cheaper properties to buy, or cheaper rents? And so I'll stick with that right now.
Yeah, I'll just, since I kind of touched upon this already, I'll answer this one. So again, I think the development feasibility analysis is going to answer a lot of those questions. The sort of goal here is that these housing units would be naturally affordable because they're a lot, be easier and likely less expensive to build than a 15-story, 20-story apartment building high-rise downtown, or a 7-story apartment building, for example, on Stevens Creek Boulevard. So that's what we're going to test. But this is not likely to be affordable housing, meaning housing for lower income households. It's going to be, the goal is to build housing that's more moderate income. And a good example of this is the median price of a single family home is $1.2 million. What we saw at least a couple of years ago, that when a duplex was built and they were for sale, so you could buy one duplex unit and someone else could buy the other one, the price was in the high 6s. Now, mind you, it would be higher than that, I'm sure now, but the idea is that it would be more affordable than just trying to buy a standalone single family house, which is pretty much people's only choice right now. But all of that needs to be tested as part of this financial analysis, which we'll be doing and presenting to the council in the fall.
Could I just respond very quickly? We hope it does both. And I just want to bring into the discussion that this isn't just about places, homes that people can afford. It's also about places in the city that people currently are being denied access to because they can't afford a $1.5 million home. So part of this is to provide options at different price points, but it's also really to create access to parts of the cities that frankly are the most resource rich parts of the city. and currently are exclusively reserved for folks that have the price of entry. And that's part of the goal, is to open up parts of the city that haven't been. Is it going to be affordable to low-income households without a program to make? No, it's not. But it's going to create opportunities, either ownership or rental, and we hope both, in different parts of the city where they don't exist now. And that's the hope, is both to create a diversity of geographic options as well as a diversity of price points.
Thank you. Bill, we'll come back to you if time allows to answer your other questions. Next, we have Thomas Oshidari.
He's unavailable to ask his question.
Thomas's question: will the fourplexes be purchased by one owner and then rented to tenants?
So yeah, under the proposal, it wouldn't be restricted to either ownership or rental. We're kind of agnostic on that. We're hopeful that it could, as Michael was mentioning, that it could provide opportunities for ownership for middle income families who otherwise would not have that opportunity today. However, as proposed, it could be again rental or for sale.
All right. And Tara, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, my question is, people have been talking about parking and I haven't heard anyone talk about the schools. Right now, it already feels like there's too many kids in the classes. So how would we accommodate these new students if we're adding more families to existing neighborhoods?
So what we're finding is that there's actually less and less. We've been talking to the school districts on another proposal, and the school district enrollments are pretty much shrinking across the board. There could be a school district out there that isn't, but I'm not aware of that. What we're finding is that there's less kids out there in public schools. I think partially because families are moving away because they can't afford the area. Partially because we're just having less children, becoming more like New York City or San Francisco, and just demographically we're having less kids. And then also I think there could be a trend of kids going more to private school, but yeah, public schools are really struggling, and actually they're looking at many of them at shedding land, school sites, and trying to generate revenue from those sites through leases to make up for the loss of students and the loss of income that they have to support their educational services.
Yeah, we've also been speaking with the school districts and some of the teachers unions, and they're having to cut positions. They're talking about consolidating schools. It's a very, very difficult time for schools in the area, and bringing young families back into some of these communities. Actually, we're hearing would have a positive effect on stabilizing some of those schools.
Our next question comes from Eric Gottschalk. Eric?
Hi, good afternoon, or good evening. Quick question regarding parking. I know it's come up for a lot of people. I live in a neighborhood where there are currently a lot of duplexes interspersed along the block, and basically in downtown there's a lot of that. The parking situation here is virtually chaos because there are so many people with so many cars and not enough parking. Is that going to be a potential problem citywide that will basically make San Jose less attractive? Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the question. And again, yeah, we've definitely parking is one of the prime top concerns that we've heard from residents in this proposal, and it's definitely something that'll need to be considered in the next phase of this work in terms of if the city's going to allow opportunity housing, what's the appropriate parking requirements, what would that look like? And I know there's also a lot of I can't speak for Department of Transportation, but yeah, there's definitely lots of I know discussions around the permit parking as well. I mean, that's not part of this policy work, but again, in terms of parking requirements, that's something that will be addressed in the next phase.
Thank you. Our next question is Johanna or Joanna. I'm sorry, I don't know your first name. How to pronounce it?
No problem. It's Joanna Rao.
Thank you. Please
Hi,
ask your
thank you.
question.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for staying on the line so late and for this great presentation. We heard some of the reasoning around the argument to implement opportunity housing citywide. I'm hoping somebody might be able to expand a little bit on the reasoning behind the suggestion that opportunity housing be limited to transit corridors and urban core.
Sure, yeah. The primary reason is because it was city council direction. You know, they wanted us to explore opportunity housing specifically around transit-oriented urban villages. And, you know, the reasoning behind that is likely in these transit urban villages, not only is there public transit as an option to offset, you know, any additional vehicle miles traveled, but also since it's an urban village, we're going to plan it, you know, there's going to be mixed use, there's going to be retail, there's going to be services in there. And so to promote walking and biking in that neighborhood and concentrating that or putting that a little closer to these services, I think that's the logic behind that.
And just, Jessica, that's a really good answer. I think the other logic behind it too was that this opportunity housing could provide a more gradual transition between single family neighborhoods and higher density housing. Whereas now a lot of the urban villages have single family budding right up to areas that we plan for higher density. So sort of that transitional middle sort of scale development between the two. I think that was the other rationale.
Right, and there's a second part to that question. Yes, we, as part of the community engagement process, we will be establishing, you know, design guidelines for opportunity housing so that we don't end up with, you know, some ugly building. So that will be, you know, we'll draft it and then we'll go through a few rounds with the community, with different communities too, to see the input, and then we'll fine tune, you know, should council direct us to do this work, we'll fine tune it through that process.
Thank you. Our next questioner is David Slesnick. Hi, David.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, just in general, this is a comment more than a question for sure. It just seems like it's a dirty trick to the people that are in existing neighborhoods where they bought in whenever they bought in, specifically for the nature of what it is as far as being single family homes in a nice neighborhood. So you change that paradigm, and for those folks, whether they've been there for quite a while or whether they're fairly new and have bought in for $1.5 million or whatever it is, it's not something that those folks bargained for. And I think that it's probably an understatement that it could change 1% a year. I've seen rapid changes in our neighborhood in terms of the demographics, which is great. We're a very diverse neighborhood. And it's happened over a very short period of time. And I think that if you get people that are money minded, that are in this for making a buck, developers, whoever it might be, that buy a number of units and then rent them out and don't really care so much about the decor. We saw some beautiful places, but I can well imagine some fourplexes that I've seen around that are atrocious. And I'm not sure how that gets regulated. So it just seems like there's other solutions. My wife and I were in Paris 2 years ago, and we saw how effective their mass transit train system is coming into the city of Paris because there's limited housing. And I think the mass transit that we're talking about, complete with light rail and all coming out of Dearden Station, I think is a better solution for getting developments outside of the city, plus high-rise living. I think degrading existing neighborhoods is absolutely atrocious. That's just my own feeling. Parking, congestion, as I said, units that get poorly constructed and there's no real maintenance of the people and their behavior and the number of cars and trash that they generate. it's just not right. That's it.
Thank you, David. And next we have Mary. And Mary's not available to ask her question. She had a comment. She wanted to say that opportunity housing units will add to rental property only. They will not add inventory for residents that need subsidized housing. Please delay implementation of it until development of housing within transit villages. Thank you, Mary, for your comment. And unless anybody is dying to comment on
Can I
her
just
comment.
really quickly, because this comes up a lot, this is not an either or question. And, you know, that's just really misdirection. The city is committed to building high density housing along transit corridors. It has staff dedicated to that. I spend way too much of my time trying to figure out how to make that feasible and cost effective so that it's affordable. This is one tool in a complicated toolkit that we need to respond to the full range of housing challenges that we face as a city. This is not an either or situation. We're not going to slow down on the urban village development. This is not housing that's going to, you know, be the solution to the problem. It's not a silver bullet. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's an extra tool in the toolkit, and it's really important that it not be conflated with the solution to the housing problem we face, because it's not that.
Just to reiterate, as Michael was mentioning, we are, conducting a cost effectiveness study in terms of looking at, what the feasibility and kind of the price points around rental and for sale ownership, opportunity housing, and what that would look like in different markets throughout our city. So that will help inform that the discussion. And again, there's no regulations proposed that would require this type of housing to be either rental or for sale.
All right. And next, Hillary, if you changed your mind and would like to ask it, you can go ahead. But otherwise, as you indicated, I'll read your question for you. You said, since there is a difference between the staff and task force recommendations, is the city council trying to decide which one to adopt between the two? For instance, are they trying to decide whether to explore changing zoning just in the mass transit area zones versus the entire city?
Yeah, I think we answered this question a little earlier. There are two different recommendations, and it's up to city council whether they want to go with staff recommendation closer to transit or task force of citywide or anything in between those two. So it's really up to city council to decide that.
Or something completely different or nothing at all. I mean, they will decide, give us direction.
The final decision is with the city council.
For tonight, is that it then? Okay. Well, I certainly like to give my thanks and appreciation to all of the community members that provided questions and had discourse, and we certainly have the questions in the question forum. I'm not sure if there'll be a place for us to be able to answer them and post them somewhere, but if there is, we'll try to let you know. Thank you so much to our panelists for being here tonight, and we do appreciate your time, and I do appreciate the civility and of the discourse. Alex?
And I want to reiterate what Liz said and thank everybody, the planning division, Neighborhoods for All, David. I think this went really well, and I also want to thank all of the attendees and hope you all have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you.